So tell me a story. Tell me where you grew up, how you grew up, and like, what was, do you have siblings? How did you, your parents? Tell me the whole story.
So I grew up in Finland. Was born in '88, small town, family of two doctors, uh, three siblings who were 9, 12, and 15 years older than me. So I was the last one.
Oh, the youngest one. Okay.
So for all intents and purposes, I for a good portion of my early years, I grew up as an only child, but then with the benefit of having still older siblings.
Yeah, makes sense.
My mom dies when I'm 5
Oh, sorry to hear
of a
that.
of a treatment failure.
Of what?
And of a treatment failure.
Treatment. Okay.
And at that point, like, there's a good part of my psyche that checks out.
Yeah.
I did not cry. I said, okay, I'm 5. Think about your 5,
Yeah.
a kid as a
Yeah.
5-year-old, they say that, kids don't like understand death. I sure as hell did. Because what I said was, yep, mom is dead. She's not coming she's gone to heaven.
Wow.
That was that. And for the longest time, because I checked out, I didn't feel the sadness of it. I totally spiritually bypassed it, where I said, well, God protected me from getting hurt by that. And God gave me a stepmother. God gave me an amazing me. And, that worked out for me. And
Wow.
it was not until 30 years later that sadness finally started coming up.
Hmm.
So there's like a whole emotional spectrum that was entirely inaccessible to me for 30 years of my life, which is why I became very cerebral, and it served me really, really well in business life. But then, now I got 3 kids, and I realized that, I got a bunch of irrational beings
Yeah.
that go way, way beyond any capacity of being smart, and they push all kinds of buttons of
Yeah.
going on road trips and late nights, whatever. And so now I have to deal with this shit. Way my dad dealt with the death is he became a workaholic.
Hmm.
So then and got remarried 2 years after my mom's death. So, I guess for all intents and purposes, I pretty much raised myself, and recognize that there's a lot of ways that a lot of shit that wasn't taught to me.
Hmm.
Like I never learned any of, a lot of basic skills. Like I literally understood this about myself about a month ago, that this idea of comfort, what's comfortable, like comfortable clothes on your body, right size shoes, or that something could feel nice, as a psychological category, did not even exist in my brain. Like if you tell me, like, hey, like, what's your self-care look like? Like, how do you, what feels good to you? I said, why don't we do eight rounds of squats? Then we go to a 300-degree sauna,
Okay.
and then to a 30-degree cold plunge, and then we'll have a steak afterwards.
That's funny.
Which is like literally that's what I thought it was. Well, I'm becoming stronger. It's not self-care, right? Because like this idea that something could feel nice,
And be comfortable. So what is
yeah,
the,
become like literally did not exist in my mind.
so
And
what is,
how does that what does that make me as a parent and as a husband? It's been interesting.
that's interesting. Yeah. So what is it like to be a kid in Finland that is different, like as if you different than being a kid in San Pedro, California? Just from a cultural or from a lifestyle perspective, or expectations, societal expectations in Finland versus Southern California.
A couple pieces. How is it different to be a kid there than here? It's safety is a huge piece.
It's safer over there?
It is way safer over there.
Okay.
Growing up, and I'm not making this a gun violence sort of political piece. It's just descriptive of the society that I literally did not know anyone who probably knew anyone who had a concealed carry.
Got it.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like people might have shotguns at their summer place or whatever.
Yeah.
But like a weapon for self-defense, like I don't know that. Like thinking back to Finland, like, I probably still don't know anybody in Finland who has a gun for self-defense.
Yeah.
And so again, not to make it a political piece. It's just I think
reality.
it's quite bespoke of how people carry themselves, right? Yeah. Sure, there's violence and pedophiles or whatever. It's just like in the next place.
Yeah.
But it's by and large the notions are very, very different. You'll see a 7-year-old taking public transportation to public school on their own, and that's socially acceptable, and it's not a notion of being lower socioeconomic status or something like that.
Kids are much more independent. Say they feel safe, therefore they're much more independent.
Correct. Finnish educational system in the 90s when I went through it was the best in the world. They probably still like to think they are, but apparently they're falling in rankings, and I have my opinions on that. Why that might be the case. You could go to school anywhere in the country and you can become a doctor. Like there's that TED talk by Hans Rosling, I think his name is, where he talks about the American dream. Statistically, if you want to live the American dream and have social mobility, you should move to Scandinavia, where anybody can actually become statistically likely become anybody. That actually happens way more in Scandinavia than it happens in America.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, education is very highly valued, and like being certified and having a degree. Entrepreneurship is not sort of it's a sort of a small class of entrepreneurs, and they're kind of their own entity and like.
And it's not as elevated, it's not as kind of respected, if you will, as being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer.
Or a teacher. So there's another interesting piece, is being a teacher is very highly regarded, even if not necessarily highly paid. But it's fairly highly regarded. And that's one of the things that drives a lot of our common day reality in the US is what school district are you a part of? Which then means that you have to keep up with the Joneses. So you can have to upgrade your houses, which creates a lot of mobility and not a lot of continuity. And it's a very transient culture here compared to Finland, where people typically a lot of people might go 12 years to school together. And it's very, very common that it's just, okay, wow. Your parents live right here. This is where your family is placed. You go to this school, and then 6 through 9 you go to this school, and 10 to 12 you go to this school. And like pretty much everybody in my hometown where I was born, that's what it looked like. That they were a cohort for 12 years. So then if you think about from a cultural perspective, what kind of cohesion does that create within a small community where we went to school together. And like people know everybody, and they're at the same time sort of highly educated. They might go to university somewhere else, but then they come back. And so
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It's kind of like almost like a small town where everybody knows everybody. They grew up together. It's got a good part, it's got a bad part. It's good because you have, these trusted relationship. You have someone, kind of possibly kind of looking out for you. It's bad also because sometimes you just want to be forgotten to start over.
right.
And you know what I mean? And then build a new image or build a new persona. And it's hard to get away from it all, I mean, because the rankings get set up early, and it's just like it becomes like it is what it is, and then you just have to live with it for 12 some years, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, and then
Um,
it'd be hard for you to break out of that, out of whatever the social mold that you
yes,
get slotted
yes,
in. I remember thinking about that
yeah,
as a kid when we first then moved out of our hometown.
yeah,
And I realized like, oh, like up until that point I was the guy with the tousled hair and baggy pants and
yeah,
sweatpants, and I realized like, wow, I'm preteen at that point when we moved. And I realized, holy shit, I have a second chance now. I can start
yes,
doing my hair without it feeling so vulnerable and exposed that, this guy with a troll hair, all of a sudden takes the social risk of trying to look nice and not necessarily succeeding.
yes, exactly. You take more risk, you have another chance, another opportunity. So
Yeah.
I tend to actually enjoy places that are like high turnover, transient communities. I tend to like that a lot because
Mm.
I'm constantly reinventing myself, trying different things, and I get to meet new people that are trying to do the same thing. So it's always on the discovery adventure side. Then just like the same thing, you know, the same stuff over and over. So as you grew up, like, so did your dad have new kids, or that was it? It's
So
just three
then,
of you.
I had there was four of us, right? And then um, so then my dad had kids with my stepmom, 16
Yeah.
years that are 16 years younger than me. So they're
Wow. Okay.
twin boys who are 16 years younger than me.
Okay. So you're 16. You're probably out of the house already, or a little bit more independent.
On my way out for
Yeah.
sure,
Got
and
it.
that definitely served as an additional impetus to get out of there.
Yeah. Okay. So your dad was workaholic. I'm assuming he wasn't super present. He wasn't super engaged. Um, how did that experience inform the way you raise your kids?
Uh, I'm the polar opposite.
Okay. Yeah. Figured.
Yeah,
So
it's
how?
well, my dad would my childhood image of dad is that he was working on his PhD,
Yeah.
right? And I would go out and bid for connection in his office, and then he was always too busy. So then I would sit on his office floor, and there were a bunch of ants that walked around the 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 floor, and I would just smash them with a hammer for 5 minutes, and then I would go away, right? And that was like the degree of connection I experienced as a kid. There were a couple of like trips, and that were very pleasant. But it was very hard to get the attention. That I had zero uh, expectation that I would have any parental attention, right?
And our, and just
So now, like, my kids will always get my attention,
and
and
back then the Finnish men, were they like were they like the affectionate, emotional, like, is that a thing, or you have this typical Viking kind of like a perception, or like even Germanic kind of like perception, where it's a little bit colder, a little bit more um not as emotional as you would with different cultures.
yeah, I think the perception is rooted in most truth.
Yeah, so most kids are kind of experiencing the same thing that you were experiencing. You know, you were not getting a lot of attention. Most kids were not getting a lot of attention anyway. They were trying to spend their time outside doing things.
Yeah.
So it's not like you didn't feel like it was unfair that, you know, some dads were much more affectionate with their kids than your dad was with you.
Um, yeah, I definitely did not view it at, at the time that
Yeah.
way. But that has, like, the notion that things could be different
Yeah.
has not even occurred to me until now that I'm an adult. And
Okay.
now I'm making some of those comparisons, like, oh, so and so's, dad was involved with the hockey team or whatever, and they wanted to stay connected with their kid, even if it
Yeah.
was that, or they were always in the soccer practice, they were interested. So yeah, now I definitely do have the little bit of a comparative consciousness of it.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Um, so as you're, like as you're raising kids now, what is your goal with them? What's your vision?
Autonomy, belonging, and competence.
Okay.
ABC.
I like it. Autonomy, belonging. So I understand the autonomy piece. So why don't you break it down for me? What does autonomy mean to you? So I'm not going to assume.
uh yeah, so these kids will need to figure out how to make it out in the world on their own. So I guess that as a most sort of basic notion of it. Obviously, there's degrees to it. What the autonomy look like? How do you back into it?
So
Uh,
so self-reliant, if you will. So they can.
yeah,
Okay. And so how do
yeah.
you teach that? How do you develop that?
An anecdote comes to mind. I was just talking to my wife about someone's parenting style. How their style is very much saying, "Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that." And how's the kid supposed to know what the hell to do? If they're always being told not to do something,
Yeah.
right? So I guess at the most basic level, it is teaching what to do and teaching them skills, which is very painful for me because there's so many damn skills that were never taught to me. And I'm now only realizing later on, like, shit, like, these are actually kind of handy skills to have.
Yeah.
Maybe you should not always just live inside your head.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
Uh,
hard to teach too. It's the patience, the time, especially if you're in the survival mode, like we were talking about earlier. Um, yeah, makes sense. And so so that's autonomy, belonging. So how do you develop belonging in your kids?
um, as a skill set, it's an emotional intelligence, right? Um,
So when you say
uh,
belonging, what does that mean first?
being part of something greater than yourself
Okay.
in sort of concentric circles, that you're not alone while you're an individual, autonomous individual. uh you're still part of a greater whole.
Okay.
You're part of this family. You're part of a greater community, a tribe, uh and 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 sort of a citizen.
Okay.
um I have a little hard time thinking very, very much beyond tribe.
Okay.
um,
Yeah, I was
but
just
but but the recognition that you can make it out on your own.
okay.
So
So how do you
so there,
teach that? How do you teach the skill of finding a tribe, building a tribe?
my kids are only 8. It's the oldest one, so I don't know yet.
Okay.
And my wife and I of figuring out how to do that together as well. So at the moment, the way it looks like for me is teaching the requisite emotional intelligence and social skills.
Okay.
And
Okay.
a lot of that is mirroring of what we do, being very open about our emotional expression, where nothing's off the table. My kids see me cry very often.
Okay.
If I happen to want to cry right this very moment, I'm not going to hold myself back just because kids are around. They might ask me, "Oh, why are you crying?" I said, "Oh, I'm feeling sad because my mom died." And my daughter would say, "Okay, I'm sorry."
That's good. So you mean like more self-regulation, self-awareness. Okay. But the whole, do you know my shtick around building community?
A little bit. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Let's hear
All right.
it.
So I'll tell you because my kids had to because we moved a lot.
Right, right.
So they were there was a point where they were down on themselves for not having friends in Hawaii, and it was during COVID and all. And I asked them the question. So what do you want? And they said we want friends. And I said, okay, what kind of friends? I'm like, we don't know. I'm like, well, you want smart or not so smart? You want funny or boring? You want active or inactive? You want people who are like into the things you like to do or not into the things you like to do? So we created an ideal friend profile, and almost like,
Mm.
if we're talking about tribe, the ideal tribe. So what what does that look like for you, for the kid?
Mm.
So Isabel had a criteria, Jack has his own criteria. And then now that we have created this vision of what it looks like, now we're gonna go find it. So when we go out to the world, we're seeking, we're filtering literally the funnel of like possibilities through that filter that we just created of the ideal friend profile. So, and how do we do that? We ask questions. We go to the playground, we ask questions. Hi, my name is Jack, I'm 4. How old are you? I like Garfield. What do you like? I do jujitsu. What do you do? I like to do the monkey bars. What's your favorite thing in the playground? And then, so if the kid is talking to you, if the kid is keeping eye contact, smiling, engaged, that's a possibility. If they're not, move on to the next kid. Now, once we do that, once we identify one good possibility, good prospect, then what do we want to do? We want to get the phone number. And so a 4-year-old doesn't have a phone, so there's a mom nearby. Hi, ma'am. My name is Jack. I like your son Joey over here. I'd like to invite him to a pizza party. What's a good phone number? And
Mm.
then so the kids had a quota at 4 and 6-year-old had the quota to get 2 phone numbers a week, or they don't watch TV. So if they get it, they make like I think $5 a number, and if they don't, there's no TV that weekend. If they're like they Essentially if they don't attempt and they don't get anything at all, then it's no TV that weekend. They only watch TV on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So within 6 weeks, they had like 24 friends, and they became the hub of that community. They never had to do it again until we moved again to Florida. But from that moment on, they developed and then later on, we start talking about it. We start saying, okay, so who are your favorite friends? Who are your top 5? Who are your bottom 5? Why the top 5 and the top, and why the bottom 5 and the bottom? And then we start refining that filter. And then
Mm.
so now that they're 9 and 11, they have a much clearer view of what works for them. What does their wolf pack look like? And that's what we talk about. It's like you need to have your wolf pack.
Mm.
So what does that look like? Someone that you can trust, and so obviously each kid have their own based on
Mm.
who they are and what their preferences are, and they're very clear on it. And if they see and they know what they want, and they know what they don't want for sure. So when they see the thing they don't want, they move on really quickly. It's like, oh, not for
Mm.
me.
Mm.
And then when they see the thing they want, that's it. Let's get the phone number. Like literally, now they have urgency about it because for like years, I've been telling them, like they'll tell my daughter will say, "Oh, I met this really cool friend. We work together in this like fair, blah blah blah, this business fair, whatever, and she's great." And I said, "Great. Do you have a phone number?" I was like, "Oh, I forgot. I'm gonna see her again." And I'm like, "No, dude, you may never see her again. So you gotta close. you gotta you gotta collect the info." So now they're aware. They're aware, and they're aware of the follow-up, because they, if they, let's say we moved over here, they still have to follow up with their friends, the network they built in Hawaii, the network they built in California, the network they built in other places. They have to follow up, they have to email, they have to invite people. So we have a monthly party in our house that the kids organized. They've always had that. We have we create an environment for them to host and to solidify and strengthen that tribe that they've developed.
So let me ask you, how does that then, what does your family's social life look like in terms of because I'm assuming you have a somewhat of a similar process for you personally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And there's probably certain overlap between the parents of the kids that come in, but it's probably some kind of a Venn diagram.
Yes, sometimes. Yes.
How does your family's tribe then construct? Is it sort of like this the kids bring in their friends and then you become friends with the parents, and or
No,
or is it
yes.
sort of
So yes and no. So we have each have our own circles. So I have my own circle. My wife has her own circle. Mike, Isabel has a circle. Jack has a circle. Sometimes they meet, sometimes they don't.
right?
And so, but we preserve each circle like let's say my wife has really good friends. I may not get along with the husbands. It's okay. I want my wife to hang out with her best friends, and I don't need to be, an issue. Sometimes if it works, great. If we hang out, fantastic. But we don't have to do that. And same thing with my kids. My kids sometimes, only the mom, like the kids have, my daughter has a party, has a sleepover or something. So they're like 5, 6 girls in our house. I'll take Jack somewhere, and then I'll let Isabel have her own circle. And she has her own thing. So we like to have those things independent, and then whenever there's a possibility of having everybody together, it's like if we're gonna have like let's say a Thanksgiving event, then we'll invite as many people as possible, and everybody's there. They're from all different circles, all different networks, and then they all come together. If we do a 4th of July thing, we'll bring everybody, and all the circles come together.
Okay,
And
so then talk me through, like, what does your social calendar look like? Like, say this week or next week, to where everybody's circle somehow gets addressed, because you guys are homeschoolers.
Yes.
And what portion of the circles are sort of everybody doing their individual thing, and like, how do you deliberate on what the togetherness is
Yeah,
in
so I'll give you an
across the
example. For example, for Friday, it's our date night. So every weekend or every Friday is our date night. And so either me and my wife will go for dinner, or we'll double date with a friend, and we'll go on a double date somewhere. So there's just us. Now Saturday, we'll be invited to a party at someone's house, or maybe we'll be hosting a party in our house. But we're always like going, or it might be nothing. It'll be just we'll go to the museum or something. Sunday, Isabel has her friends group coming on Sunday, and then this event, it's all the kids. So Jack, so like Isabel's friends and Jack's friends together, and then they're all like doing the pool party, pizza and all that stuff. So I may not be involved, but the moms will be there. So the moms and my wife will be in our house, and then the kids will be in the pool, and I'll bring them everything they need, and I'll take care of everything, and then I'll go do my thing, or I'll be in the office by myself working, right? And or it could be that we invite everybody, and then everybody's in the house, and the fathers and the moms and stuff. So it all depends on what the flavor of the event is like. But we
Okay.
try to rotate. We try to like. It's not like it's there's no. It's a flow. You know,
Mm,
so if we feel like we haven't had, our Go Abundance friends over a while, so we'll just throw out an
mm,
event and we'll say, hey, once you guys come over and hang out with us, so we'll have like, 3 or 4 couples. If we feel like, oh, Isabel hasn't had her girls, events for a while, we'll tell her, hey, why don't you go have your friend over and do this? So there's so much going on all the time. Um, and we just kind of like have a menu of options, and then we'll just go with whatever we feel like is and it always, and also there are a lot of events. Like there are so many birthday parties, there's so many people throwing events, there's so many, like South Florida is like it's a place where everybody's celebrating all the time. There's always like some type of like hosting situation
mm,
happening all the
mm.
time. So yeah,
So then how far are you booking out your social calendar?
I would say probably no more than 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the kids, because they're presumably always meeting new people. Do they
Yes.
always have a point of reference out in the future where they can invite people?
Yes. So they have like a monthly thing that they do. And then they have like an email list, a blast that they send out. And so they get like they create a
That's
Luma
awesome.
invite. They get really,
Wow, that's
yeah,
dope.
they get really cool about a Luma invite, and then they blast it to their friends, and whoever can come comes, and whoever got something going on will catch us on the next event.
Hmm. All right. So there's always a monthly thing going on.
And then
And
also we
Jack and Isabel do it together, or
yeah.
they do their separate things?
So in general together, but sometimes they'll do their separate things. But then they also got to a place where now we start talking about how can we, level up the event? How can we, make an event, so what is the goal behind the event? So we make it like so much fun. How much fun? Is it memorable fun? And we want them to be people talking about it for like a year, 2 years, remember that day that we did this thing. And so
Mm,
we create like we work together to design the experience, from the moment people walk in, what happens, who do we introduce to who do we, what kind of games do we create? What kind of food do we have? What's the sequencing of things? Do we do the games first? Do we do the pool first? Do we do this or that? Like they're literally get into like the nuances of making the event a memorable event. So they create this stickiness. So when they send out an invite, everybody's gonna say yes.
mm,
And then
yeah.
so it's very fascinating. Like, and they curate, they can tell like who's gonna get along with who, and then who's gonna, be cool, who's may act out, like they know kind of like, so they pay attention to those things. So we use the event to create stickiness in their network, in their tribe, and all that stuff.
Mm. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I like the sound of that.
All right, so let's go back to your the 3 things. So you said autonomy, belonging, and then what was the last
Com
one?
Competence.
Competence. So like,
Competence.
so how do you develop competence?
Um, it's, through repetition,
Okay.
obviously, um, and intentionality.
Okay.
Uh, and again, it's they're 3, 5, and 8. So what does that look like? Well, we're chopping apples,
That's
or
good.
whatever, or whatever. We're loading the dishwasher. We're taking out uh, food scraps of chickens.
Yeah.
We're clearing the table. We're cleaning the room, trying to put things away after you've used it. Kind of
Yeah.
Maria Montessori sort of
I like it.
notion of that. So whatever is age appropriate,
Yeah.
trying to be mindful of the things that they're learning. and
Makes sense.
my wife is really 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 good at that. And
Nice. So how did they handle? I know you've been displaced with the fire. How did the kids handle that? What was their with the LA fires?
yeah, um,
How did they react to that? What did you think about at the moment? How did you kind of help them navigate?
yeah, it was a memorable evening evacuating. Very fortunate that it happened around 7, 8 o'clock, not like 1 a.m., right?
Yeah.
We had 40 houses burned in our neighborhood. Closest
Wow.
house that burned was 15 houses up from us.
Wow.
And what happens is like, because we were thinking like, ah, shit, well, yeah, if it's burning out there, like, who cares, right? But then 80 miles an hour winds. And then I sort of stopped to think about it like, well, we had those winds and last night and all the dry stuff from the trees last night. So all we need is one of those embers to land on our yard and we're off to the
Yeah.
races. Or the neighbor's yard, and then the fire's going to jump onto our yard.
Yeah.
We're going to be off to the races. That's where you see a whole row, of houses go, which is not necessarily like right next to the burn area, but it's like
Yeah.
further down. We had a whole row go out like that. So then we realized, okay, well, we don't know if we're going to evacuate, but let's at least start packing up. And then you
Yeah.
go through the proverbial exercise of, well, if your house was going to burn down, what would you rescue? So we had our memory boxes. We grabbed everyone's loveys. We grabbed the safe, wedding dress, and all the camping gear. Because at that point, we're like, we're not thinking straight. Like maybe we'll have to go out somewhere, camping and whatever. We end up in San Pedro at our, Chelsea's sister's place, but and we didn't think clearly enough until we're on the road. Where are we going? Because we were thinking, let's go to my office in Monrovia, and then we realized, oh, that's not a good idea. So we get the car packed. Kids are asleep. So then we transfer them over, and I figured if we can transfer them over without them sort of having to see, because the flames came super, super high, and super close, like probably a quarter mile up the street.
Wow.
And so, can we get the kids in the car without freaking them out? And well, they did end up waking up and seeing the flames and whatever. And then we had this sort of special moment of talking through the threats.
Hmm.
We're like, well, what if our house burns down? We talked a little bit about insurance, talking about having, safety reserve of money, you know, having a place to go. So we are safe. Our house could burn down. And then we had this moment of like, I asked my daughter, like, do you feel afraid? And she said yes. And then I asked her, do you feel connected? And she said yes. And I said, yeah, we might be afraid, but we're still connected. We're together. And in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, the thing that's most important comes together in the moment. So then, first week or whatever, we're just hanging out with the cousins. The kids look like they just pretty much forgot about the whole thing. They're
Yeah.
just having a blast, and there's so
They're
many
on
freaking
vacation. It's a
bodies on
holiday.
top of it, bodies on top of each other. But then about a week in, we start talking about it, and they hear that the boys' school burned down. So that sucked, and that's what eventually made us. That was probably the biggest factor why we ended up moving out of Pasadena, even though our house didn't burn down, over to San Pedro. Now, well, my wife's whole family lives over here in San Pedro.
Hmm.
Um, um, but then, I'm thinking of Mr. Rogers when he says, you know, everything is speakable, and everything that is speakable is figure outable.
Yeah.
Or what, I think that's the quote. Uh, and I was sort of, again, trauma literature is like, we need to complete our stress loop. and recognize whether there is an actual threat or not.
Mm.
So we completed the stress loop by talking about it, and everybody talking about how they felt about it, and then it sort of organically turned into this game we would play every night called Natural Disasters, where the kids would, they arrange the couch in certain ways where like this over here is the ocean, this couch, and when you're here, you're on the desert, and when you're here, you're in the mountains, when you're here, you're in the forest or whatever. And then I would be coming up with different natural disasters. Okay, now there's a tsunami is coming from the ocean in 5, 4, 3. Now they had to get off at that couch and go to the next one, and like just the most obscure. And then it turned out very fantastical, where dragons started attacking them, and there are all kinds of hobgoblins that were after them.
That's awesome.
Then my Dungeons and Dragons background kicked in, and now they started collecting items and completing quests.
That's funny. Did you have the conversation with them? Like, if you had to run away from the house, what would be the one thing you would pick up? You can only pick up one thing. What would be the thing you'd pick up?
We had that conversation prior, actually multiple times, and
okay.
everybody had a very clear understanding of what it was.
Yes.
So we caught everybody's lovies, and that's the thing we would say, because particularly my daughter and my youngest son, their levies are like, I don't care if the house burns down, everything can burn out as long as those 2 things stay.
Yes.
Everything else can burn.
And it's actually super powerful concept. If when you talk to the kids about, it really clarifies things for them. It really gives them a sense of what's important, what's valuable, why, because I have to make a choice. Why am I making this choice? Why is this thing? And it frees them. It frees them from everything else, especially when something like this, when you're forced to make that decision. And it gives them a sense of like a value of things, and then it gives them a sense of like what matters. And I think even though it's like it's a traumatic experience, we had, I had this thing with my kids. We went through like a big earthquake, we went through fire, we went through hurricanes, we went through like so many of those things. The big fire in Maui, and they really, they start thinking about it. It's like, oh, what really matters? And at the end of the day, really, as long as you're with your family, as long as you're safe, as long as you're healthy, you don't need anything. But if I have to grab one thing, maybe I'll grab the photos, the pictures. You know what I mean? Maybe it's one thing, but everything else is not that important. And that frees them up in terms of like being attached to things. And being, and really thinking that certain things matter when they don't.
Yeah. I feel like, I feel like we went through definitely that recognition.
So are you still technically you're still affected by the fire? You're not.
Well, now we are in a permanent residence again.
Okay, you're permanent.
So now we have a new place.
Okay.
There's still boxes everywhere.
That's what I was gonna ask you. The boxes. Yeah, so you got to get rid of the boxes. I have a rule when we move. So we moved so much. I have a rule: never leave a single box. And like it's either needs to be thrown out or we're gonna empty it. And so not a single box in my house. Like literally a day or two after we move. That's it. Like 48-hour rule with the boxes.
Okay, that's what I was kind of asking. What was your timeline with that?
Yeah, 48 hours. Like ideally, I want to clear it that same day. I'll get a movers and I'll bring boxes and I'll stay all night for like getting rid of boxes. Like if it doesn't fit, we'll throw it away.
Yeah.
So when we're packing, we're making that decision now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we moved a lot. I think, we've been married for 12, 13 years now. I think we moved like 6 or 7 times, 6 times. So like we've gotten really good at it. So we would not pack it unless we know where it's going to go in the next place.
That's right. Yeah, we were in a limbo. And also when we were moving, everything had to be cleaned up.
Oh, yes.
Professional cleaners.
Oh, yes. Because
you have all kinds of smoke ash, toxic, VOCs.
Yeah.
all that. So,
Makes
uh,
sense.
so that was an added hassle. So
Wow.
the moving process took 4 days,
Oh, wow.
which
So
sucked.
you have somebody going through all your stuff and cleaning it like like a special, like a service? Oh, that's fascinating.
Hmm.
I never knew this. It's
Yeah. So I mean, any if you have a Service Master, Serve Pro, Pure Clean, Full
okay.
Davis, what are those mitigation services,
Yeah.
right?
So they
Because
do
I mean,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, contents
Interesting.
cleaning. That's what it's called, contents cleaning. And obviously, because I'm in the industry, so
Yeah.
I was savvy to it, and a vendor that I knew right away, okay, we're going to use so and so
Wow.
for it.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about it.
So,
Wow. So the kids in different schools now or in different things? So they
well,
changed?
so now we're going to be homeschooling.
Oh, that's awesome. That's congrats.
Yeah,
That's a big
yeah,
move.
yeah. So I mean, it's so many transitions all at the same time.
What made you want to
Uh,
homeschool?
um, a number of factors. Um, My biggest fear putting my kids to school somewhere else is that somebody's going to fuck up their love of learning.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's one thing. Another thing is most public and private education is cohort based. Uh, Unless you do something a little bit, maybe a little bit more fringy, like Waldorf,
Yeah.
but then you're up against a bunch of ideology and at the same time, if you're a homeschooler, well, that self selects certain ideologies. You're probably going to have a sort of disproportionate number of religious people, for example,
Yeah.
or medical freedom crowd. That are probably the two biggest reasons for homeschooling. Neither were sort of particularly my concern, my flavor per se. Um, and then we're in a place in our life where we have a lot of time freedom.
Nice.
So why not build an infrastructure that works for us? I consulted actually with my sister, who's a teacher in the Finnish educational system, and asking like, okay, so in early education, like realistically, how many hours of learning goes into a week of school? And I was just sort of testing the Aaron Amuchastegi's hypothesis of the 5 hour work week,
Yeah.
because his hypothesis is like realistically that's how
Yeah.
much learning goes into a week anyway, so why don't
Yeah.
we just do it hard, do it good, and then we do whatever we want and then enjoy those meta skills. So that's what my sister said. Yeah, there's probably about 5 hours that would go of actual learning into the early childhood. So then now it's kind of just a privilege, as of this week, I've been the homeschool teacher to my kids. So to my oldest daughter. So from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30,
Nice.
you know, we're working on our money math right now.
That's awesome.
and
That's
and
awesome.
so a way to be present too, right? To their learning and you
So
know.
now, so let me ask you this. So if one of your kids comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to do what you do. I love, your life. I want to, do whatever you do." What would you tell them? What would be your advice to them?
My advice probably would be, why don't we test that out?
Okay.
Why don't we test it
Well,
out?
let's say they say, when I grow up, I want to be like you, Dad. I want to do what you do.
Right.
So like they're still
Well,
young. They're
I'll
still,
probably have to ask you, well, what the hell is it that I do?
yeah.
I'd be
Well, I don't
curious
know
about your
either. I don't know
I'd be
either. Can
curious
you
about your
tell me?
perception. I'd be
Yes.
curious about your perception. What is it
Well,
that I
there's just
actually
like,
do?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a good question actually, because obviously,
What do you mean?
you either talk to them about what you do and how you do it, or you don't. So obviously, in your from your response, that means you haven't had that conversation with them. What is it that you do and how you do it, and how does it
Uh,
affect people?
yeah, they know that daddy gets people money
Okay.
when for on insurance when something
Okay.
bad happens to their house.
Okay. That's good enough. That's close
Okay.
enough. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well,
So
my daughter understands that. The boys, they don't.
got it. So
But
so if your daughter comes and says, I love, like, I love the idea, I'm gonna do that. What do I need to do, you know, now I'm 14 or whatever. What do I need to do to get there?
yeah,
Would you be encouraging for that? Would you be you want them to do something else, or you would give them a plan of what it is? What would be, like, I asked this question because, like, there's a 50-50. So 50% of people say, oh yeah, like, do blah 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 blah, yes. Or 50% is like, hell no, I don't want you to do this, do something else. Or I'll try to, why make your life harder? How about you do other things? So it's an interesting, every dad had a different reaction, but I'm always surprised when
yeah. Yeah, I guess my heart in that is that, yeah, absolutely do what I do if that's what you feel like is the most true to who you are.
yeah.
Like, I'm here to help you. What feels the most true to you? What's most exciting to you?
Okay.
If it happens to be what I do, well, I'll help you figure that out.
Yeah.
If you want to be a plumber, I'll help you figure that
Yeah.
out. Just because I've taken a certain route, doesn't mean that they should
Yeah.
take that.
Makes sense.
Uh, you know, I personally obviously feel strongly about being an entrepreneur, but who knows? There's certain amount of leadership, leadership and self-leadership that goes into
Yes.
to be an entrepreneur. Well,
Absolutely.
shit, not everybody needs to be a chief. Like, there's
Yeah.
got to be some Indians too, and
True.
if my kids decide, well, I want to be a follower. I want to be an
Yeah.
everyman kind of guy. I want to have a job at the harbor or whatever. I'm like, hell yeah! How can I help you? How can
That
I
makes
help you?
sense.
I love that for you. I
That makes
love
sense.
that for you. I want to be connected to your truest self. What does that look like?
That's awesome.
Um, but to me, it's very important that they figure it out. And something like we talk a lot about in our circles about something like legacy, passing on wealth or skills or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I'll pass on my wealth if in my estimation they can handle it.
Yeah.
Uh, but it might ruin them. So, like, it might be a great idea. Let's
True.
let's see. Like, I would want to do that if uh, if they first built the skill set to handle that, and
And
at the
and
same
that's
time,
why that's where the parenting comes in. That's where, like, helping them
yeah,
develop the wisdom and helping them develop the reasoning engine that's gonna help them make good decisions. So at the end of the day, you want to teach them how to make good decisions. And then the resource, the money
yeah,
part, or the assets, or the name, or the brand, or whatever it is, just a resource, and they're going to use that resource, in a more effective way if they have a good decision making process and good
sure.
decision making engine.
You
Um,
know what I would be super tickled by is if one day uh, I got to work for one of my kids.
oh, that'd be cool. That'd be fun. Yeah,
That'd be fun. It's sort of
yeah.
like maybe they
I'll
had a
do that.
company.
I like it.
Maybe they had a company, and then they say, well, hey, Dad, can you come and run our HR? Can you come
Yeah,
and
yeah.
run the sales? Can you
The
kind of run
sales.
the
Yeah,
yeah
yeah. I'll take the
or
sales
or,
job.
or, or whatever? Can you come and right throw some people out, clean out
Love
garbage,
that. I love
clear
that.
out the trash or whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'd love to help you out.
Yes. All day.
I'd be so honored.
I love that.
If,
That's a good idea. I never thought about it. That's a great idea. I like that vision, that goal of being there, supportive um, of your kids. That's awesome. So final question, thought. What do you like about the Raising Lion community?
I think the exposure to ideas and examples. Um, we can't desire what we don't know about. Or conversely, we can't hate or be dissuaded from what we don't know about,
Yeah.
right? I would say in the Raising Lions community, we have more of those examples of what to desire, and like it sort of desire is mimetic. Everything is mimicking,
Yeah.
when it comes to things that we want. So that's I don't know, I'm not sure I had that many models of parenting.
Yeah. Well, no one did.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and now we have an amalgamation of them.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
it's a good crew.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andy. I appreciate you taking the time. I know we went a little bit longer than we planned, but
So good.
I always enjoy talking to you, man.
Same. Likewise, man.
I appreciate it.
Gotta go plan a pizza party, a treehouse party.
There you go.
So our kids can start inviting people to their treehouse
I
party.
love that. Yeah, post some pictures.
That's right.
Show us
Yeah,
the treehouse pictures. I want to
that's
see
right.
it.
That's a highlight of this property. Is there's a big treehouse
Uh,
with power in it too.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
man, that's good. So it wasn't, LA's not coming after you to get a permit for that thing, are they?
I'm
I have a friend of mine. I have a
I'm
friend of
not
mine who
sure.
built one in Eagle Rock, and he's there. Like they've been after him for a while, but I think after the fires, give him a break.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? We'll
yeah.
just call
All
it
right.
ADU.
Yes. All right, dude. It was good talking to
All right.
you. Have a good
For sure,
one.
man.
Appreciate
Bye.
it. Have a good one. Bye bye.